Hi, welcome. This is A is for Addict, where I talk about my 20 years of struggle with addiction and then finally recovery. I ended my last story where I was telling you how I met my wife and that we ended up being married within 2 months. So I'm going to carry on from there. You know, being an addict and being married those first couple of months was extremely difficult. This is also something that I've never spoken about. But I was about 18 months or 2 years clean when we got married. So being new to a clean life and living with somebody that had absolutely no time for drugs or had never used drugs and didn't know that lifestyle at all, it was extremely difficult to keep from her. You know, I wanted to be open with her about everything, but that type of lifestyle is not for everybody, and it's definitely not for everybody to know about. There's some things that people can't handle. I was a bit worried if she knows everything that had happened, and the way that I lived and the way things were, that she would see me differently. In hindsight, I see now that I wasn't being realistic. She had also deep feelings for me, so I shouldn't have worried about that so much, but I did. So the first couple of months was difficult, keeping certain things away from her and trying to be this man that I was still becoming. I wasn't the person I yet wanted to be. I was still out there trying to become this guy that is clean from the drugs and doesn't think like an addict anymore and leads a sober lifestyle. So that was all a bit difficult. Any addict during recovery will know exactly what I'm talking about. We never planned on having a child. We did say if it happens it'll be nice, but we didn't plan on it. So after a bit of time, after being married for a good year, and it was a good year that we had, we had stopped wondering about it and stopped trying to have a child. We just thought, okay, we leave it in God's hands, and whatever happens from there happens. And then one day she told me that she was late, and we decided to do the tests and see what the outcome was. I'll never forget the day. We bought the pregnancy tests, and she done the test. It was early morning still. I was sitting on the edge of the bed. She done the test. She came back into the room. We sat, we waited, and it turned out positive. She was pregnant. I couldn't control myself. I just started crying, for many reasons. For one, regret, not because of bringing a child into the world, but regret of how things happened with my last child. I still had not been on talking terms with Jordan. Things have still not been sorted out with him. I hadn't gone any forward really. I hadn't spoken to my sister. That part of my life was still unresolved. So now with Zalika being pregnant, it brought up a lot of old feelings. I cried because I was so happy, that we were going to have a child together. I really was. And then in the back of my mind, I was so hurt for the way that I had treated basically my previous life, losing Jordan and all that had happened during that time. But it was exciting. She was pregnant, and we were both extremely happy. She had a healthy pregnancy. Luckily, I was on a good medical aid. So we had a good doctor, a good gynecologist that was taking care of her. She would give birth in Linmed, which is a good hospital. So all of that was wonderful. It's my life had panned out that way, that things ended up, I was able to take care of those type of things. So I was really lucky. I also bought a car in that time. I bought a little Uno Fire. Biggest mistake of my life. I had taken a loan for it to be able to get this car. Being so excited, going to go buy a car now. The first car we went to look at, I bought. I mean, I should have known. There wasn't even a ignition slot for a key. There was a push button that he had installed to start the car. I'm such a walkover at times. I should never have left the property. I should have just turned it down. But I don't know. I went ahead and I took it. We got a couple of months out of that car and then we sold it. It really didn't work out for us. We lost a lot of money, buying that car. We eventually had to sell it. But before we sold it, when Sadika had come to term and it was now time for her to give birth, and she booked into Linmed Hospital. I can't remember how long she was in labour or any of that. I know it was so scary because I went in with her to give birth. Obviously they cover her from her waist up. I'll stand behind her by her head. So I went in with her and she was going to have an epidural. Watching the doctor try and give her the epidural, he tried about 3 times to insert the needle and he couldn't get it right. Sadika has had a back operation and she got pins and things in her back, and he couldn't get it right. And I was so worried. You can imagine the type of panic that is. So they had to move straight from epidural. They had to move to do a cesarean section, which was so frightening. But thank God everything went down well. It all went according to plan. There'll be a picture up now of my son. It was one of the most exciting moments of my life. I was there in the room when the doctor pulled him out and held him up like that. The light shone on him, the light from the room, like he was an angel being born. It was so amazing. That's actually one of the best pictures I have. I absolutely adore that picture. I love it. And so my son Aiden was born into the world. After a couple of days I took them home in that little Uno that was barely driving. I took it home, took them home with it. And so our life with the children began. It was in recovery, dealing with those type of things and knowing how many things you are now responsible for, and besides having to feel that you need to prove yourself to everybody else, you've now got not only to prove yourself to your immediate family now, your wife and your new child and your small baby that you've got, but you need to make sure that you're responsible enough to always have the type of cash flow and type of things to cover emergencies and to cover things that happen. And that in itself is so daunting and so frightening that it was hard to stay strong, to not fall back to old ways. And it wasn't as simple as it just never crossed my mind anymore. Those moments, it did, using did cross my mind at times when things were tough, because things were hard. We weren't living a lavish life. We didn't have lots of money. Zalika was earning small, I was earning small. Now we had this place that her mom actually helped find for us, a place where we were living, just a small 1-bedroom. It wasn't big at all, and it was already myself and her and Diane, and now came along the baby. But we managed to move into another place just opposite before Aiden was born. We moved into a 2-bedroom place, which was a bit bigger and a whole lot better for us as a family. And as a matter of fact, we're still there now because it's on a plot. I have 2 boys, so at least they've got all the space in the world. Although I must say, with today's children, which I've noticed, I mean, my boys have got an Xbox and that's all they do. It's YouTube and Xbox and social media. That's it. The days of being outside the way we used to, I see that doesn't happen. It barely happens, So, we were living the life. I was clean, I was working, she was working, we were raising our kids. We were doing well. Everything was going pretty well. I don't know what else I can tell you about that, except that, there was a lot of moments where I was frightened that I wouldn't be able to do it, that I wouldn't be able to be this man that I believe that she saw, because I think she saw somebody responsible. She had no idea about my past. So, the person that she saw, I didn't know if I could be. But she helped me so much become that man. There's a lot of times today that I think, would I have managed with my recovery if I didn't have her? because Lika was such an amazing help. Her positivity and having a background that she did of not knowing really anything about that type of life, it really helped me. It helped me avoid those type of situations. And then also staying with her and moving into a place in Benoni, I was away from the normal playground of where I done all the things that I shouldn't have been doing. So I was no longer in that environment. I was far away from it and living a completely different life, which I think made it a whole lot easier. I didn't have those temptations. I didn't see people from my past. I didn't have the normal routes that I traveled. So there was none of that. There was none of those triggers to get me to use again. And then, like I say, having her in my life was a godsend. Even being 18 years younger than me, it's God works in mysterious ways, and I really believe that He put her in my life not only to help me with my recovery and to help me stay clean, but also so that I can be there for her. Because I think she was a bit lonely. She's never said anything to me, but I think maybe at that time she was a bit lonely and also a bit worried about her life and if she's going to find somebody and be able to settle down with somebody again. Even though she was young, I think she worried a bit about that. So I think God put us together for a reason. And now at the end of this month, it'll be 13 years that we're together. Obviously, as a married couple, we've had our ups and our downs. Things haven't always been perfect. But thank goodness and thank God that it's never been because of drugs. I've never had to use drugs with her. I've stayed clean. I've stayed on the right track. Like I say, things have been hard at times, but we've pulled through and we've done good. So this video should actually be dedicated to her, to say, you know what, love, thank you for helping me through those dark times. Half the times which you never even knew about. Times when I was feeling the strain and feeling the pressure, I could rely on you. And I don't think you know half of it. I don't think you realize just how much of a support you've been. You've never been materialistic. You're very down to earth. There's so many things about you that I never saw in other women. I might have thought many times that I was in love, but I never experienced the type of feelings for them that I've experienced with you. And then also being the mother of my child, who you're raising absolutely amazing. He's such a little gentleman, and that's got a lot to do with you. And I'm so pleased. I'm so thankful and so grateful. So thank you, Z. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for putting up with me. And now that you've watched these videos and know about my past, thank you for staying with me and for understanding the type of things that I went through and the type of life that I had. I'm going to call this video to an end now. It's almost 10 minutes. There will be more following, obviously. As usual, I got to ask, please share these videos with people that might need to hear it. You know what, it's not always 100% about addiction or about recovery, but there's a deeper story in it. The story is to see or to watch a person that has recovered, that has been through the 20 years of struggling and 20 years of chaos, and yet now when you watch him, you probably wouldn't know the difference if he didn't tell you. And recovering addicts and addicts in the middle of using need to understand that and need to know that recovery is out there. You can recover so well that people never have to know that you used, if that's the way that you want it. Although none of us have anything to be embarrassed about. We had a disease, we have a disease, and we fight it daily so that we don't have to have that type of life. So yeah, share it with people that need to hear it. Yeah, for those of you that are caring for addicts, watch the videos so that you can try get into the mind of an addict and see how we think and see that we still just normal people, just with the sickness. The previous short I put out before this by Gabor Mate, the guy that talks about addiction and tries to explain it, explains it so well. He really does. Go back and look for that short and watch it. It's really interesting. So once again, I'd just like to say thank you all for watching A's for Addict. Come back for future books, subscribe, and let people know about the channel. I'll speak to you soon. Thanks. Cheers.